questions.
I just read a thing, I think it was Dominic Dunn had produced Panic in Needle Park.
Yeah.
And he was saying that there were two actors up for the up for the role. And I think he described Robert De Niro as getting down on his knees begging for this role. And talked about mentioned how you were, rivals, very competitive at that time when you were starting out. You, of course, got the role. Did you feel like you were rivals for early in your career? Have you felt competitive?
No, naturally, you're an actor, you want to get the part. I mean, I read for it, but I didn't know how far up I was up for it in actuality. And that was...
Was that 1970?
I don't even... It was long ago, yeah. It was about that time.
Did you know each other back then? Were you friends?
Yeah.
Did you ever...
Yeah, we run into each other, like,
We met each other once on 14th Street, between B and C. I always said hello because I had seen Robert in the movie the wedding party that Brian De Palma made, and I was very impressed with him. So I remembered him from that movie, and I saw him on the street. I think there's other movies we almost did. I think The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight was also a movie that we were both being considered for, which Robert did. And Pope of Greenwich Village we were going to do together at one point, and Bobby was going to direct that. And that was...
Yeah, it was...
And we've read some scripts together. So, and we've known each other for a long time. In the sense of it.
When this movie came along, because you're on opposite sides of the law, was there, did you both want to make sure there was a scene where you would be able to sit down and do something together before the climax, or was that scene in the diner always?
Oh, that was there all the time. It was there.
See, the movie was sort of built around that, in terms of the characters, that the two characters would confront each other in that way. That was part of the idea of the movie.
People have been touting this pairing between the two for a long time. Together again, the first time it's been a line that's been used. There's only really one scene in this film where you have, a substantial amount of dialogue, the coffee shop scene. Did you two approach this scene? Did you work on the scene a lot beforehand, really try to make that a special scene, or did you pretty much keep the dialogue as the way it was written on the page? Both of you guys worked the thing for a while.
It was just the way it was written. It was a terrifically written scene, and I think we
We read it at the reading together, and then Michael had us into his office once just to read through it very easily, and then we did it. We didn't rehearse it. No.
Did you feel the special aura in that scene, since the public is looking forward to that so much to see you two act together? Do you feel an importance on the scene yourselves as actors?
Well, yeah, I especially enjoyed it because I think Bob put me at ease and made me feel. Since I've known him so long, I feel it was a kind of. In the theater and in movies and in acting in general, there's such a thing known as relationships, in that you try to find a relationship with your other actors together, and put sort of find a harmony together, and a lot of that has to do with a certain trust, and that usually comes through playing with each other. The more you're together. That's why you see people doing things. They're in the same movies together. I know I had it a lot with a fellow named John Casale, who I made a few movies with, and I worked on stage with, and so there was a rapport. And I have it with actors throughout the years I've got to know. And I never worked with Bob, so it was surprising that I had it with him without ever having worked with him, and just having known him and shared things with him in our personal lives. I had known him in that way, and So I felt there was a relationship before we got to the scene, so we were freer in a way to communicate. Yeah.
We can use that scene again for a question, because I couldn't help thinking while watching it, while you're talking about cops and robbers and their compulsion about their work and the cost it's had for them, that you all were talking to each other about acting and about going on location and how the impact it may have had on your personal lives. And I wonder if you could each talk about that.
Well, that's something that'd be done for a skit on Saturday Night Live. Two actors talking to each other about whatever, just what you said.
I was going to show up there.
You mean by that, did we feel identify with the...
Your characters, was that resonating for you, that acting has had a cost for you in terms of having a conventional personal life? Like these characters have had unconventional personal life.
Not for me. It seemed like a scene that you approach in terms of there's always a resonance. You bring with that. You bring yourself to your work, so there's always a resonance there. But I don't know that I consciously thought about it. I didn't. I don't think.
You just say that again. I'm just curious.
Okay. For example, some of the lines were things like, you know, we have to do this. We're driven to do this. We, you know, being what I am is all I am, and the personal life is secondary, and it has to be because I am so dedicated and so good at what I do. And I wonder if that's part of, you know, for you, if that was going through your head at all, and if that's the case.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I only that you can understand their compulsions or whatever.
If you hear Yo-Yo Ma or Agassi talk about what they do, you hear the same kind of focused, you hear the same language about focus-driven commitment to something that the individual derives some kind of elevated experience from. And both these men are similar in that way, and maybe that's why it resonates a little bit.
Since you met in 14th Street, you know, what, 20 years ago, more than that?
More than that, yeah.
Describe the kind of relationship that you have since then. Did you meet socially, regularly, or what kind of relationship did you two guys have?
I think throughout the years we've come across each other, and sometimes we've done it. We've called each other and met and gone out. And, we know each other's kids, and we have shared some things that were personal to us. And I think Robert mentioned this before, that there was a kind of a similar, there was a bond, a kind of a thing when we felt, at least we imagined, that we were in a similar situation. And that gave us a certain comfort from time to time to meet and talk. And interestingly, at least for me, I don't think we talk much about the actual work of acting or stuff. I don't remember it, but in passing.
For both of you on your characters, could you talk about your characters, what drives them, and what within that drives them do you find yourself that you can really relate to?
Well, that's something you do for yourself. You make that comparison or transference or whatever. But we would do that with Michael, and then maybe separately. Someone I know I did, I'm sure you did, Al. And then we got together and just sort of walked through it, the scene.
Can you describe your character? Who is he in this film? What makes him tick? What makes him go?
This is the guy.
I know he's written, but I mean...
He knows. Believe me. Ask him. He'll give you a better.
Can you give us your view of him rather than the director's view? You're a director.
Yeah, but that's
what did you
something
bring
else.
to this as a director and an actor?
Well, he wrote it so well, Mike. I thought it was terrific. And what was so he did a lot of thinking about it and a lot of research and a lot of homework. And so he made it easier for me to come into it. And we went to some places to interview inmates in prisons, one in particular, and then we interviewed people who were just out of prison, or spent many years in prison, did this sort of this training. Al did his training, I did mine. We were separate with the same people, but different, well, actually different people, no. And Michael had a whole program built in that really was very helpful, and just made it easier for me, and I know for all of us, I'm sure.
Mr. Pacino and Mr. De Niro, would you, in an area that Mr. Pacino was going, you said you don't discuss your work with each other that much, but I wondered if the two of you might sort of mention some things about each other's performances, or certain performances that you admire of each other, and something like, any chat that you might have had about that together, or if you haven't, could you share some of those moments with us now about things that you like of each other's work?
Well, I remember being, sort of seeing things that Bob has done in the past and very recent times, and have been taken with the work so much that I remember even writing you about it, because I didn't know where he was, so I sent him a note about it, and I've done that on occasion. And some of his great work, which is plenty, but I can remember. What can I remember? Raging Bull as something that, and then seeing Godfather 2, and on, but Goodfellas, and even that Once Upon a Time in America. I remember being, staggered by the subtlety of his portrayal and the nuance, which is what we often talk about with Bob among us actors who admire him so, about his nuance and the way he approaches things. So there's a lot to learn from Bob in film acting.
Mr. De Niro, could you do the same for Mr. Pacino?
Well, I like all three Godfathers, 1, 2, and 3. I was terrific in them. And there was a play that I remember, I don't know if you know, I saw this. Does a tiger wear a necktie? I don't know if I saw it. That was not so long, but he was terrific in that.
That was mid-60s.
Yeah, that was.
With the degree of fame that both you fellows have you gotten used to, or do you understand the fact that people want to know about your personal lives?
Want to know about the personal lives, did you say? Or?
Have you gotten used to the fact that people want to know about it?
Have you gotten used to the fact that people want to know, or do you still pull back and resent it?
That's the answer.
Well, sometimes I'm flattered if somebody wants to know about my personal life. I think that's that shows an interest, and it is always the only way I can think about it is when I identify, and with that, thinking of whose life do I want to know about their personal life, and how does that manifest itself? Why are we interested in someone's personal life is interesting. That's why we, I've just been reading books on Picasso, for instance, so there's a reason one, not to compare myself with Picasso, I don't mean that at all, but it's there are certain actors, true, that I have been interested in the past, whose biographies I've read, and people who have been all walks, politicians to people in general, who are you find that you're interested in their lives for some reason. It's because it's interesting, I guess.
I wonder if each of you could comment on the romance of cops and robbers and why America thinks it's so sexy and in a sense we're like siding with the robbers in many ways in this film.
Well, I don't have much to say on that one, because I don't play a robber in it. But I understand, I think it's the way Bob portrays it, and Michael has, you know, what the job he's done with it. He's found the kind of human element in this thing, and which is, I don't know how he did it, but Michael was able to, and he sort of wove it into the film, so that you find yourself, you know, kind of hopefully you find yourself, you know, undecided, you know, but you find. You did? Well, okay. Then I don't know if I succeeded or
Well, you did
failed.
such a
I don't
good
know
job.
how to look at that.
Niro. I had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Pacino for Glengarry Glen Ross, and we talked about when you were younger and how your grandmother encouraged you to become an actor, and you spoke with pride about your relationship with her. And I'm wondering, Mr. De Niro, did you have someone in your life when you were growing up who encouraged you to become an actor, and also the response from your family when you told them that this was how you wanted to spend your life?
They were supportive about it. They were not people who would be against that, being an actor, you know. So that was not that wasn't a problem for me, you know. I didn't have anybody who was specifically like supportive, but they were supportive, but not like somebody who was my, you know. Like I think that they were saying in your case with your grandmother, or something, that she was very supportive about it, or
Yeah.
yeah. So.
Well, my mother was very supportive.
Yeah.
I think that, but I said that already, didn't I? To you. But my mother was very supportive. I think that the environment that I came from was different than what Bob's environment was. Just he comes from a different kind of a background. And I think that where I was concerned, it was important to me that I had the support of my mother, because I think it made it possible. But again, I found in the end that I didn't know if I was going to be an actor until later on in life, when I realized that I think I came to it through my dear friend and mentor Charlie Lawton, who exposed me to a kind of literary world where I became very involved in reading and that kind of stuff. And I think it was in this in that area that I started to get make a decision to go into this field in a way, because of what was there in the greatness of the plays and now I find being a movie actor too is also so much a part of it's connected somehow to education for me, since I never went to school. I never graduated high school. So I found, not that Bob did, I don't know that Bob did either.
Right.
But I found that through this medium, I was able to educate myself in a way, and I think it helped my life.
Did you know early on that was what you wanted to do? I mean, he said he knew later on.
I knew early on I was an actor. I mean, I was doing it all the time. I was in the school plays and that kind of thing. And so, but I didn't know that I was going to seriously, go into it. I never made that conscious decision until I was in my early 20s, because it was then that I realized it was what I really wanted to do, because the attraction to the things I was going to do, like the wonderful worlds of the writers and I think that's what once that happened to me, I found that this whole idea of success or making it, or it didn't matter as much. What mattered was the involvement and engaging myself in this kind of activity and this world. So.
We have a question for both Mr. De Niro and Mr. Pacino. Someone before was talking about fame and people being interested in your personal life. I'm also interested in how it affects your craft, because I've seen in the comedy business that comics get so famous, after a while they're no longer as funny as they used to be because they sort of lose their edge, they lose their spark, and a lot of it is because they lose their touch with what it used to be like when they were ordinary schmoes. Now, neither of you grew up in the business, neither of you grew up famous. It was something that happened as a result of all the recognition for your work. And I'd like to know, having been famous for so long and now being world famous icons, how you stay in touch and how you keep your edge, because, still to this day, there's the films that you've done this year, Mr. Niro. I look at your performances and I lose sight of the fact when I'm watching, this is Robert De Niro. I'm so immersed in the character, watching the character as you're portraying him. I'd just like to know how you keep that edge.
Well, you don't lose touch with your feelings. They're always, that's always the same, and I don't know. I mean, with comedians, sometimes I know what you mean. It's something happens where they, except for some of the very good ones. I mean, you're always in touch with things going on, especially today with communications so strong, television, this and that. I mean, there's always, and so it's not. I don't know.
Are you aware that you still have your edge? You still feel it?
Well, I would hope that I would have an edge, or that, yeah.
If I can add something, both of these men are artists. They're artists first. And as artists, they're driven to do the work that they want to do. That process in and of itself just automatically takes them into certain areas of doing, kind of quality work you're talking about, and means that they would probably perceive as something that may be flattering, but also kind of a nuisance. Some of the aspects of being, what you call a star. And actors in general, particularly these two men, a very important part of it is taking in experiences on the street, taking in aspects of life that you see, and some of that fame gets in the way of that. And so the avoidance of it becomes a very, very important part, but I think it's inherent in who these two men are. That's why, them being artists, that's what allows both of them to be doing the work that they do.
Here's a question for Michael. What's it like working with two such incredible talents like De Niro and Pacino at the same time? Did you find it harder to direct them, or was it like, here's the script and you close your eyes and let it happen?
No, the experience was couldn't wait to get up in the morning and go to work. It was a very thrilling, exciting set to be on. I couldn't have the character of Neil McCauley, who he is, the character of Vincent Hanna, who he is, couldn't have been richer and more full-bodied and varied and filled with accuracy of execution and surprises and spontaneity, and that pretty much characterized the set. It was a terrific set to be on, and that's.
Do you ever want to flip the roles? Kind of decide that Mr. Pacino would.
Not at all. Not at all.
Do you have these actors in mind when you wrote this thing, or did you want to?
No, I wrote it. I wrote it earlier. But at this point in time, I have difficulty even recalling what that screenplay was like without Al as Vincent Hanna, without Bob as Neil McCauley, because it's, I mean, if you kind of collide those early characterizations with, you know, what Al did, what Bob did, there's a fullness to both these parts and a driven, focused intensity to Bob's portrayal of Neil McCauley. That's, plus I've been dealing with it on film, so at this point, what that screenplay was like, you know, a couple of years ago is almost distant memory.
In relation to the script, I mean, I got into the thing before Al did, and so, you know, I was doing Neil, that's what Michael wanted, and so on, and blah, blah. But if it had been where Al had Neil and it came to me, I would have done it. So,
I mean, have either
as far as
of
that
you,
goes.
out of respect, ever, you know, sort of done like Al, a Bob thing, you know, where an expression just in a kidding way, you know, that it's a signature thing. You know,
Well, I think I did it on Saturday Night Live once.
I did it.
I've never been on Saturday Night.
Just a quick question. Also, do each of you guys prefer playing bad guys or good guys, cops or mobsters? You know.
Well, I think it is really, in the end, it's the text. You know, it's the story and the writing and the director. I think that's what motivates you, and that's primarily where your choice comes from. Is the preference is just, do you relate to the part, and then there's the you know, there's the times when you know, you want to work, you want to keep active, and so sometimes you choose something with the hope that you know, you'll find it as you go along, or you know, but I think as time goes on, you start to pick things that you know. There was a time, I don't know how Bob is about that. I would just wait for what I thought was the right situation all around, with the script and everything else. And then I got to a point where I thought, you know, I won't work much, and when I do, I'll pick the wrong thing. So I figured, let me just see if I could just put it into the character I'm playing. So I don't think as much about the entire movie as much. Maybe I should think about it more, but I think more about the character I'm going to be playing in a movie. And except in this case with Michael, who I admire and have admired for years, his work. And I thought he's done a wonderful job here with this movie. He's done a great job. And
the script really shines in this piece. Two quick questions. One, how long was the script in development? And secondly,
15 years.
Is that right?
Actually,
sometimes it isn't.
Sometimes it is. But sometimes you get an idea, or you hear an anecdote of something that occurred. There's a reality base way deep down in the heart of this, and you know, it gestates around in there, or maybe you just simply can't figure out what, you know, the Act 2 ending is, or the Act 3 is, which is the case with this. And so I had the project for quite a while, but it wasn't in this form. And I was having coffee with a friend of mine, and also a very close friend of Bob's, Art Linson. And I said, why don't you read this and see what you think? And he read it, and he said, are you thinking of directing? I said, I don't know. I said, when's the last time you read it? I hadn't read it for over a year or something like that. I said, you better read it, because I think you're crazy if you don't direct it. And that was really the genesis of it, and I read it again. I got very excited by it, and then did a major rewrite and found the answer to how to conclude it.
Also, the second part is very few films now, I think, are able to combine so many different elements so cohesively. You've got high-tech espionage, crime, romantic relationships, and the battle of wills between two main characters, and yet you never lost cohesive focus, in my opinion. How were you able to achieve that?
Drastic weight loss, getting shorter, losing my hair. It's the work you do. I don't know how to answer. I mean, that was the challenge. That was the exciting part of it. Both as a writer, which is sometimes separate from your ambition as a director. That challenge was precisely what really got my blood running and made it very exciting. Was to do a drama and try and deliver the totality of it with where you felt that you were experiencing these people, these two men particularly, and then and some of the other characters and their inner lives, and how in life sometimes you are faced with a really critical decision.
Mr. Pacino, I think you said before that you're more alive on the stage or in the theater than anywhere else. And I just wanted to know, with the many and known volcanic tirades that you've displayed in lots of your films, there's certainly some heat. Where do those come from? Where are those based? Where do you get them? The energy.
My family life. I think that it's a part of a, not to be long-winded here, because I feel every time I talk, I go on forever. That's a new thing with me. I start talking, I don't stop. But anyway, I played the mayor of New York, so I got this. Question's gone, I can tell you that. I'll be back.
You were about 10 years old. Your role was the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking back on that, Cowardly Lion, did you ever imagine yourself as what you are now? Big, bad guy, tough guy.
Your entire career has been a reaction against it.
Who would have thought?
I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear that.
Could Mr. Pacino and Mr. Mann comment on what was going on during the women's passes? It was one of those explosive moments.
I still can't hear. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Something about women's ass.
Can you talk about the scene where you talk about a woman's ass?
I didn't know that was in the picture.
It's in the picture.
It's still in there?
Yeah. Can I talk about the scene in which she yelled?
Oh, is the one where where
With
Hannah is-
Marciano.
oh, Hannah is. I think that the character is prone to these kind of explosive, irrational, and a lot of those interrogations or that kind of thing, I got through watching detectives working, going into a kind of flipping into a kind of, as flip-o-matic, as they say, going into this state of just general chaos in order to get something out of it's a kind of a modus. And I think that this character finds that's a kind of it gets his motor going, and he functions behind it. It's a kind of a hysteria of some sort, and it shakes up the witness, whatever you,
Subject.
the subject. It shakes them up so that it's a way of getting to a certain truth out of them, and I use that as the cop's technique of doing it, and Hannah seems to explode with that kind of thing.
We set up during pre-production. We all set up
Yeah.
some kind of hypothetical interrogations with some thieves and some detectives, and they got into certain kinds of play acting.
Yeah, they would sort of do it. They would interrogate someone, and I remember seeing a few of these, and they were very unusual.
out there.
They were unusual.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be what you'd expect, and I think. Again, I didn't make a conscious choice for it. I think some of it must have stayed in my unconscious, that kind of approach. So when we got into the scene, I let that go.
Vincent Hanna has a full palette of tactics and strategy for how he operates on the street. And he could be dealing with somebody like Albert Torino, who's played by Ricky Harris, or Marciano in the scene you were talking about, and he will rock that person off his foundation to a point where the man loses whatever defense mechanisms he may have set up against this detective coming in, because he doesn't know if Hannah's going to be rather baroque with him or whether he's going to gratify him or be nice. And these are all tactics that Hannah uses.
Michael, you stated that you couldn't imagine doing a movie without Pacino and De Niro. Give us your thoughts about that, please.
What I meant by that was that Al and Bob have each filled up these characters with so three-dimensionally, and they're so strongly in my imagination, and I've been doing it with these two men for 2 years in terms of the pre-production, the shooting, and now in post-production and the editing, that the concepts of these two characters for me are kind of inseparable from from what I consider to be the brilliant work that each man did.
Have you two guys talked about working together again? And if so, could you clue us in as to maybe if there's any kind of future project in the works, or even speculative?
We talked. I mean, we've said we've talked pretty much enough times. Fair amount of time to find something. It's not so easy, but yeah, I mean, if it would be try and get something. If we could get something that would really be good, or create something, which we've tried. So it's funny that this happened. Definitely, you know.
I'd just like to know how you do approach the work with the actor. As a director, how do you direct the actors? Do you do rehearsals and all this? And could you compare both ways, Mr. Nero's and
okay. Well, part of that process between the director and the actor is private, so it really, isn't something that you talk about. In a word, differently. Bob is Bob, and he's portraying Neil McCauley. Al is Al Pacino, and he has a certain acting process, and he's portraying a very different character. Ashley Judd is Charlene Shaherlis, and Diane Venora is Justine Hanna. So each one of these, from a narrow director's perspective, each one of these actors and the character they're portraying, in a way, calls for slightly different, or sometimes largely different, attack. Beyond that, it's kind of, it really is kind of a private process. There's what is similar is to all of our approach is a real belief in preparation and a real grounding in being in character long before you start shooting. So, and if you do that work well, with imagination and with some wit, then what happens is when you're out there shooting, you're freed up, you're liberated to because it's all there already. You're liberated for surprises, for spontaneity, for magic to happen. And then in some scenes, like the scene between Al and Bob, you don't really ever want to take that. You don't ever want to wear it out in my office. You don't really ever want to rehearse it. You want to give it its full opportunity to be magical and spontaneous right there when the cameras are rolling. And then we took it one step further and shot both sides of that dialogue simultaneously, so that all the nuances and harmonics of performance, as Al reacted off of Bob, as Bob reacted off of Al, could all be there in one take. And there may be a small gesture on Al's face that Bob sees, and it causes him to put his hand on the table, not even consciously, because of that. So you want to capture both. So most of that scene is one take, shot with two cameras.
Where in the shooting schedule was that scene?
Sir? Sorry, sir.
This may be something of an odd question, but I'm Italian-American, very proud of my ancestry, my heritage. Many arguments in my household about who's the better actor, which is always fun. But I'm just wondering, how has being an Italian impacted or affected your career, your lives at all, or has it?
That's called when the wit won't come. Well, when you think of it, before the 70s, I don't know that there were that many. The thing I don't know about Bobby, but the thing growing up here with me was if you had an Italian name, you were to change if you had a vowel in your name, or if you were Jewish. The idea was Tony Curtis was really, I believe, Bernie Schwartz, and that it was in our culture that was the going thing that you know. I remember hearing as a young kid that, well, you're going to have to change your name. That was, and I remember my name was Scott, George C. Scott, but I changed it. Now that was funny. But you know, that kind of thing. I don't know the residue of that or how that affects you, but it does have some effect. I wouldn't want to be glib about it because I think there's something to your question, but I think it would require a long answer, a couple of days.
Mr. Mann, is there a specific factual basis to this story? And if so, Mr. Pacino, is there a specific role model for you?
Is your question, is there a basis to the story? Yes, there's a detective who's an old friend of mine from Chicago named Chuck Adamson. And he was, in the early 60s, he was pursuing a thief who was very good, very aggressive, very smart. If you got in his way, it was going to be your problem. And he was, managed to surveil the Neil McCauley, if you like, and McCauley became aware that he was being surveilled and then wanted to know who was on him, whether it was the Chicago Police Department, who it was, and they mounted some counter surveillance. And Chuck found out about the counter surveillance, and so both were in the situation where they knew about each other, and they happened to meet by accident. Chuck was dropping off his cleaning, the other guy was coming out of a bar, and didn't know whether it was going to become a shootout in the streets of Chicago or not. And Chuck said, "Come on, I'll buy a cup of coffee." And they didn't have the conversation that Al and Bob have, but the intent was clear. A good, driven detective wants to take in as much of who he's going after as he can. In that sense, the process is somewhat similar to acting and directing. You want to take in, you want to absorb stuff. You know that you're picking up stuff subconsciously about this guy that 3 months from now, there may be some intuition you have. It's from having coffee with the guy 3 months ago. You heard a word, a turn of phrase, or something that associated to something the guy's going to do, and that's why he did it. And they actually sat down, and they had some rapport between them. And that happened in '63.
I have a no-brainer for you. When you were kids, I want you to tell me, when you were playing cops and robbers, if you liked being the cop or the robber, and why.
I think we used to play robbers against robbers.
Me? Yeah. I don't know. Well, it's a matter of. Cops and robbers. Some experiences where it was more. Well, no, it's a complicated. I can't answer that now.
wonder, will you ever open a restaurant that a poor journalist can go to?
I don't know. I just got into, because one of the, with the Tribeca Film Center and so on, I knew Drew Nieper and with Montrachet, and thought, well, it'd be nice to have a restaurant downstairs, and Drew and I talked, it's in the neighborhood and so on, and he could manage it because it's not, you know, a few blocks away and so forth. And so that's how it started. And then Nobu Matsuhisa I knew from going to his restaurant in LA, and Drew, I introduced them, and they knew of each other, and I used to tell Nobu that if I ever open, you know, if you want to open a restaurant in New York, it'd be great in New York. And eventually we just got it going and did it. And so it's like a kind of a, just something I like to do as a hobby or whatever, but I mean, it's very, you know, more than that. But Drew is really the person, and Nobu, you know, I mean, and it's being involved with things that are very special. They're not like these, you know, this is not, these are very, very special people who love what they do, you know. Drew is a real restaurateur, and Nobu is a great chef. So it's not like just, you know, opening up a hamburger joint. You know, and anything that they want to do, they always do with that same care. So that's fun to be part of.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.